All right, welcome back, you guys. That behind me is a 2025 Lexus LC 500, and right now it sits at the top of the Lexus lineup. It's their halo car, and it is almost 10 years old at this point. It's hard to believe. Actually, up until 2024, it still had a CD changer. That's insane. Despite that, Lexus has made changes to the car over the years, which we'll get into. But they've also teased over the past couple of years what the replacement for this car is going to look like. And I know we're all thinking the same thing. Is it going to be able to fill the shoes of the Lexus LFA? You guys, Lexus, we're ready for your next halo car. On the surface, you guys, the LC 500 is not what you would call exciting. It is striking to look at. It's a gorgeous car and it's comfortable. Not only that, but it's heavy. It weighs just over 4,300 pounds. And yeah, that's not nearly as heavy as the new M5. It's about 1,000 pounds lighter than that. But the Lexus LFA was about 1,000 pounds lighter than this. So that's where we're gonna start. And before I let you guys know exactly what Lexus has told us about the next halo car they're building, we should probably do a launch. So up here, we have our controls for our drive modes. Really good placement, easy to see. On the left, there's traction control. So we're gonna hold that down, turn it off, and then we go up into Sport Plus. The gauge cluster changes, goes all white and red, reminiscent of the Lexus LFA. Lexus knows that we loved that car. Maybe not so much at the time, but now there is kind of a cultural appreciation for that car. Yeah, we had some wheel spin there, a little bit of wheel spin. Let's get into what Lexus has told us. So back in 2019, I didn't catch this at the time, maybe you guys did, but GR, of course, Lexus is Toyota's luxury brand, and Gazoo Racing has been just bombarding us with epic drivers cars, the GR86, the GR Corolla, and of course the Supra. But they actually announced in 2019 that they had plans to develop a brand new twin-turbo V8, quote, for use in future road cars such as sports cars. Really funny way to put that, but we get what they're saying. I mean, that's as explicit and to the point as it gets, period. So when 3 years after that, in 2022, and I saw this at the time, I'm sure you guys did too, GR released the GR GT3 concept at Tokyo Auto Salon. That got us excited. I didn't know actually at the time, and maybe you guys didn't as well, that they had actually announced, like I mentioned, a twin-turbo V8. So we're sitting here thinking, hey, we see the concept. It looks very similar in shape to the LC 500, to the Lexus LFA. It's got a long hood. It's clearly a front-engined supercar or GT car. It's not really clear, but the name, GT3, that suggests motorsport. Obviously, that suggests homologation, right? The LC 500, it's not a homologation car. They do race this car just like they did the LFA, but the LC 500 is not a homologation car. So with the announcement, there are going to be pauses like that for noise, and I'm not going to apologize for it. With that announcement at Tokyo Auto Salon, Lexus straight up said their intent is to commercialize motorsports vehicles for use on the road, or something to that effect, versus taking road cars to then make them eligible for racing. What does that mean? That means homologation. That's all you need to know. Instead of creating the road car first and having to go through all the bean counters within Lexus, all the corporate people that want to shut down fun, at the end of the day, they're doing it because the company needs to be profitable, obviously. But this was great news. I was stoked when I heard this, and now that we know that Lexus is developing a twin-turbo V8, is it going to be what powers this new GR GT3. So I'm gonna be honest, the first concept they showed, that GR GT3, I didn't think looked all that great, especially the front end. More recently though, I believe as recently as last fall, just a few months ago, a bunch of outlets were at the Nürburgring looking for camouflage prototypes, and a bunch of people spotted the GR GT3, what looked to be the road version of that car. It had a much smaller wing than the concept we saw, and the front end is totally different. They also saw it kind of driving around, I guess, the development centers around the Nürburgring. We got close-up photos. It looks different than the concept. The front headlights look much closer to what's here on the LC500, although key things to note, there is a ton more aero going on this car. Huge brake ducts, air extractors, I guess we would call them, sucking air out of the wheel wells. Those are incredibly notable. Huge front splitter, a ton of cooling up front, and of course a fixed wing in the back. Well, recently it's been seen testing at Spa, or at least what we suspect to be the race car. It's got a much larger fixed wing. Not only that, but it's on air jacks. I don't know about you, I don't know anyone with a street car that's on air jacks, and if you do, they probably have a YouTube channel. There is another car though, apparently, that's running the twin turbo V8 right now, just out in the open, and that is the LC500 endurance car that's racing at the Nürburgring. I can't tell definitively from this sound clip if it's a twin turbo V8, but maybe you can. And that brings me back to the LC500. So this one I'm driving today is a 2025 model. It has the performance pack. All LC500s come standard with adaptive suspension. The performance pack adds a number of things. It does get four-wheel steering, which is awesome. That's a great sign. They're trying to kind of shrink the car, despite the fact that this has almost a foot longer wheelbase than the Lexus LFA. I didn't realize that. This car does not actually look that large in person compared to photos. Oh my God, that engine is just unforgettable. It also has variable ratio power steering. So what that means, basically, just at lower speeds, it takes very little input to move the car, to move the front wheels. You get just easy maneuverability around parking lots, and then when you get up to speed, it loosens up. It's not as direct, and it kind of but just it becomes a true Grand Tourer. I was just looking at the stats, thinking the LC500 was going to be a boring kind of old man's GT car, with exception, of course, to when you, wow, that's a dump truck that got stuck in the mud. With exception, of course, to when you put the hammer down. And then, under the hood, of course, is a naturally aspirated 5-liter V8, 471 horsepower, 398 pound-feet of torque, which, I might add, is, I believe, about 50 more pound-feet of torque than the LFA had. So here I am driving the LC500, and it, especially when you put it in Sport Plus, it's buckled down. Standard adaptive suspension here. In comfort, it's amazing. It soaks up bumps. It is so comfortable. But what it doesn't sacrifice is body control. Like, the dampers react quickly. It still feels sturdy. It actually still feels connected to the road. The seating position is phenomenal. I'm sitting nice and low down in the car. When you're in the corners, it doesn't feel huge. The performance pack also gets a Torsen LSD, which is so crucial in a rear-wheel drive coupe like this. Steering wheel's perfect. Gauge cluster is perfect. You could call it a modern classic. There are so few naturally aspirated cars left on the market that this, even though it's kind of old at this point, just stands out even that much more than it already did. It has all the ingredients that make a Lexus a Lexus. The interior is phenomenal, the stitching's perfect, the materials are amazing. Alcantara headliner here, and they have updated the infotainment. Last year, in fact, for the 2024 model, first off, they got rid of the analog clock. That kind of sucks. But they did put a brand new screen in here. They moved it closer, and they got rid of the touchpad, which is huge. And then just one row of analog buttons for your climate control. When you put it in comfort, you can shut that V8 up. Not that I've really done that during my drive at all. But it's a 10-speed auto. It'll cruise at 1,500 RPM. Light steering, but still connected. The car doesn't like sudden jerky movements, and nor should it. Above 4,500 RPM, the engine, the 2UR here, V8, just wakes up. It's got dual VVTi on the intake and the exhaust side, and it just wakes up. So even though it doesn't have the torque of a 4-liter twin-turbo Mercedes, Audi, Aston, whatever, 3,000 RPM, it's so instantaneous and smooth. But then when you hit just after 4,000, right there. I will say the 10-speed is much better when you're driving quickly. Either you leave it in drive in Sport Plus, it kicks down really nicely, or in manual mode. When you're driving a little bit slower, downshifts, they're not good. They upset the car, absolutely. But just like the GR Corolla Automatic I drove recently, it gets better the quicker you drive it. Okay, so remember the GR GT3 we were just talking about? 3 years before that, in 2019, Lexus actually announced what they called a spiritual successor to the LFA. Yeah, you guessed it. It was an all-electric coupe. Ugly in my opinion, but it's still on their website. They've got it in kind of a rendered video up next to an LFA, as well as a bunch of pedestrian electric cars that Lexus plans on building in the future. Funny thing is though, they've stayed silent on that project. They've said nothing. Meanwhile, a physical car, the GR GT3, whatever that ends up being named, is seen consistently at tracks testing in camouflage. So we know it's coming. I don't personally care for an all-electric Lexus Halo car, and I think Lexus knows that. This might be their last chance to create a fully gasoline-powered car. And that brings me to the next point. Will it be hybrid or not? So while it was at testing, Car and Driver had a photographer, I don't know if it was at the Nürburgring, but a track, and he mentioned that when it was pulling out of the pits, it was silent, and then he heard the engine start up. That's telling. I think it's going to be a hybrid. I think that's a no-brainer. They need that torque fill, whether it's torque fill to spool up the turbos, like the new 911, or whether it's just two motors up front to do torque vectoring to help pull it out of corners. I think it's going to be hybrid. I think it's going to be all-wheel drive, and I think it's going to have a twin-turbo V8. Now, personally, I won't be offended if it is a hybrid, especially if it's still kind of rear biased. How much power it has, that's up in the air. I mean, it could be anywhere from 700 to 1,000 horsepower, right? What does my perfect Lexus Halo car look like? Naturally aspirated, 9,000 RPM engine, whatever that is. That's it, and a hybrid system to do torque fill. I think if they focus on, just like the Revuelto, you know, it's been proven, it can still be done. Have a crazy high revving engine, all top end power, and then just have a hybrid system, torque fill in the lower end, and have an EV mode for you guys in London or whatever other city that you need to putt around in, just with electric power. That's it. That's what my perfect Lexus Halo car would look like, still retaining this just raw noise and everything. Pricing is another thing. I think it's going to be priced right in between the LC500 here and the LFA. I don't think it's going to be a $350,000 vehicle. I think it might be priced exactly where the ZR1 is, which is around $175,000 USD, which still undercuts a bunch of other cars in the competition. So what from the LC 500 needs to carry over into the new car? What's the good stuff and the bad stuff? Well, first off, what this car does so well is just give you the feeling that you're piloting something that's like raw, that's completely unfiltered, while at the same time just like sitting in pure luxury. I think that's the best part about this car, is that it has that kind of dual personality, and I think the new car needs to have that. I am kind of scared at how much Lexus might be willing to sacrifice luxury, road noise, ride comfort in exchange for lap times at the Nürburgring. That's what I'm most afraid of. The bad parts about this car that I think don't need to carry over, like this doesn't have massage seats. For instance, if you pay this same amount of money for a Lexus GX 550, their new body-on-frame SUV, you get massage seats. They're not the greatest, but they're still there. This doesn't have that. This has one cup holder for the whole car. In a GT car, it's acceptable, not great. It's also missing a wireless charger, further compromising the daily drivability, something the new car needs to have if it ends up with a Lexus badge. To solve this further, I'd just get rid of the back seats altogether in favor of a trunk larger than a carry-on bag. Whatever this new car is, it's going up against tough competition. The Mustang GTD, Aston Martin Vantage, Vanquish, and of course, the Mercedes-AMG GT63 SE. The LC 500 is an effortless cruiser with a reserved attitude and zero track ambitions. The next one might buck the trend.